that they could place on the emotion that they were feeling. So they were feeling happy today or sad, and it was hanging on their wall. And based on ease regulations and tape and so on and so forth, it couldn't be hanging on the wall. So they had to take it down. But the solution that we came up with, we bought the IKEA easel, which is I think, you all have it in your classroom, and we cut the legs and suggested using that as a display for this during circle time, because they use it during circle time. So the children could interact with it in that way, and then either leaving it on the as part of the classroom so they could interact with it all day, or putting it away. So when it was hung on the wall, and it was such a great lesson. And circle time, I should have uploaded the video so you can all watch it, because it's phenomenal and it's great, and the children responded to it. However, when it was on the wall, it wasn't supporting CCOI because the children couldn't interact. When we move it down, it was part of circle, they could interact with it. But so we had to find that bridge that was, they're using it during circle, so we used the easel as the solution to help support CCOI in that case. Is that fair to say, Central Square? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely.
So that was just one example of how, maybe something that was on the wall was there. It had a great purpose, a lot of meaning to the class, but how do we then make sure it's more engaging for the children, so it's not simply something that's up on the wall and we want to make it, more accessible. So I want you to look around your walls and maybe think of something that is up there right now that's up there right now, or that you've had up there previously, that we could discuss as a group to make it more be supported by CCOI better. So we'll start with Broadway. Why don't you source your camera, and we'll look at something that's currently on your wall, and we'll discuss.
We don't have much on our wall anymore, but okay, I'll try. We have the lobsters. We kind of took everything off our wall. We have this. That's really all we have. Our walls are pretty bare.
What's on your door?
On our door? The mat chart and a roll call chart, and then the nap chart as well. So it's a roll call when we leave. Roll call, check it, see who's here.
And do you have a teacher board?
Teacher board?
Yes.
You mean this board right here?
Yep.
We have the monthly theme, the weekly curriculum.
Excellent.
They came up with the book of the week, the daily schedule, and then we have, they also did, just did it this morning actually. So.
Nice.
The schedule. That's basically it.
So you took down your rules? You used to have like a list of rules that was on the back of your shelf?
Oh yeah. It ripped because it got ripped, so we took it off. But this was it became our circle wall.
So let's go over those things right there. If you could just keep your camera, and we can ask the 4 questions. Does it, if it supports, let me get the questions up. Does that support concentration? Or how do you?
Can we? I'm just gonna walk away because
Yep.
one of our kids is sleeping there.
I don't want to wake them up. So when you, so we saw the things that were hung there. Does that support the goal of concentration?
Yes,
Hi, Judy. How are you?
it does. Especially during circle, they love to point out the shapes, and they're able to do it and pay attention. On
Okay. And how about coordination?
In terms of knowing which numbers to go in line, if you're thinking of it that way.
Like physical coordination. So like fine motor, gross motor coordination.
Our weather, they have to get up. One meteorologist has to get up, and then they have to take off the weather, and then replace it with a new one.
Yeah, so that's actually really nice vertical work too, when they have to take it off the wall and put it on. So okay, that's great. Order, how does it support order?
Well, they know that which shapes that once we're done with numbers, they go to colors because it's right next to each other. And when we're done with colors, we go to shapes. So it's all
right.
kind of order.
Yep. So it's organized in a way that's like, these are the shapes, these are the colors. And here's the tricky one. How does it support independence?
Independence is the job chart we have. We have a job chart for independence. Pretty much, we came up with the goal stands. They have their names in it. We try to help them spell out their names because they're preschool and toddlers. So we're trying to have them so they could identify the letters in their names, and then they pick the job that they want. Next to the job, we have a picture of what it is so they could see what kind of job they want.
Okay. The shapes and the numbers and those cutouts that are on there, how does that support independence?
What is it?
The color, the printouts of the colors and the shapes and the numbers, how does that support independence?
When we do circle, I know we each allow them. I mean, when me and Sandra were doing circle, we had one kid each that was their charge to go up and point to the shape that they wanted, and then explain to the class what shape it was, what color did you just choose, and then move on to the next one. But they got a chance to do it themselves rather than the teachers telling them, "Hey, what shape is this? What shape is that?" Instead of their
Right. So that really, that you make a good point that they were doing it on their own, but they needed that teacher direction to navigate this, right? They needed the teacher to ask. So another way that you could help support independence, because I'm not saying that any of these ideas are bad, and this is not, although it's coming off as like maybe a little quizzy, it's not at all. We're just trying to dissect together as a group. Another idea for that is if you took those off the wall and put them on a tray, photocopied it and cut out the shapes and then the Velcro, and that becomes a matching work. And then that really supports all the CCOI because the order on that tray, which we talked about in the training, but then they're independently able to engage with that more than a circle. And that circle, you can still have it, but it can be, they can engage with it more if it was a work on the shelf. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that could add in that independent part of it to really help support these guidelines. Because I'm telling you, now every time we come into the classroom, any item in your classroom, we're going to be asking this.
Have you seen this kind of jacket?
So what about some other things in your classroom? Think about things around your classroom and how they support PCOI.
Do you have umbrella? Sorry, interrupted you. Do you have umbrella? No. It's raining. Crazy.
What about like classroom rules? Broadway, I think maybe you used to have them, I forget. But in general, classroom rules. I know for some classrooms, when I ask about them, they say they're very useful at circle time to review these rules. The kids respond well to them. So we're certainly not going to want to take them out. If the teachers are using them and the kids are responding well, and these are the rules of the classroom, we need them in there. But again, going back, if they're hung on the wall and they're written out, is that supporting concentration, coordination, order, and independence?
The rules?
Yeah.
Not really. I don't know if it's important. I mean,
Well, if you
I know
practice
the coordination.
day, doesn't that make it more for them to be independent with the rules in the classroom?
Yeah, that's true. That if we were, you're practicing with them, and that's what we want, right? That's why we have the rules. If we're thinking of it in a way that we want to better support other ideas for classroom rules that work well is to, again, make it into a work. And for toddlers, they can't read, so making a lot of visual. So if one of your classroom rules was gentle hands, you have a picture of hands that are gentle, and then a picture of the classroom, and it can be a go-together work. Like gentle hands goes with with our friends. It could be a picture of maybe the class. Gentle hands goes with our friends. Or quiet voices inside. So a picture of someone being quiet goes with our classroom. And then we can say loud voices goes at the playground. And they could be matching these. So again, they're engaging more with it and having an understanding of what these rules are. But that would be supporting concentration, coordination, order, and independence, and having it just listed on the wall. So again, just some different ideas, engaging our learners a little more about what the expectations are. Or you could just do a simple matching one.
Okay.
What about birthday boards? Talk to me about those.
We had ours already upset. We had it, but it got taken down. So.
What do you mean it got taken down?
Kids
Took it down.
No, not you. I'm talking about Melissa asked you guys to bring it down. Melissa asked you guys to bring it all the way down, and the kids took it off, and then they lost everything.
Okay. So how could we make a birthday board more in line with CCOI? Well, first let's talk about maybe why it's not in line with CCOI. What does it support any of those objectives?
I mean, I basically only used it for circle time if it was someone's birthday, and the children got to put up grab their cupcake themselves, and because it was color coordinated with whatever month it was, and it had their name on it. It also had the dates of their birthday, so they knew which cupcake was theirs, and they got to put their cupcake as like if it was your birthday, you got to put your birthday month, so put your cupcake up on the line. And they enjoyed it because they got to take it off.
So that's exactly what we want them to do with it, right? So how would that look if it wasn't presented at circle time? If you had to put that on the shelf, how could you set it up in a way that a child could engage with it independently?
Maybe the pictures of their friends to match each birthday. That way they can go, oh, this one goes, oh, whose birthdays are in July? Oh, it's Matthew and Ida's birthdays in July. And they'll be able to put those together.
Yeah. And I like how you said earlier how you color coordinated. That's a great control of error. So if you want to, certain months, if you have 3 children who are born in July, that you could put them on their pictures on red cardstock and they would match it with the red month of July. Yeah, I love that idea. Any other ideas for birthday boards?
I like Tyler One school birthday bus.
What was it?
Tyler One has a birthday bus. It's really cute. It's like long.
It's really cute.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You could even have you could take that bus and laminate it, and you could have the children's pictures on the popsicle sticks, and they could put it in the bus.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's how they have it set up. It's really cute. So again, just really be thinking about these things that are on the walls that we can just be making more engaging for our learners. I'm going to go back and pull up another quote. And what about art projects? How do we feel about art projects? And how it supports CCOI?
I mean, most of our projects are do it yourself, basically. Show an example and then do it yourself. Like we did puffer fishes yesterday with forks, and our puffer fishes have different expressions, which is hilarious. But you know, they're all, you can actually see that it was more product over. Where was it? What is it? Product? What is it called again? It's product over quality. What is it called again?
Quality.
Process.
Oh, process over
Yeah.
product.
Yeah.
And we have it hung where all the kids can basically see it right by the window, and they know that if we do a project, this is where they can put their finishing project to let it dry, and then it'll get hung up later. Like right now, we're working on Father Vegas. Each of them put it up themselves. We did rainbows today, so they know to actually, when they're all done with the project, to bring it onto this shelf so that it can dry. They do it themselves. They also made the puffer fishes. Puffer fishes have each different expressions, which is cute.
Broadway doesn't have the art boards up, but that's a great, any of the art projects that you're doing. I think that's where we want to be displaying them. We want to make sure the art boards are full when you are doing, you don't have to put up every single art project you're doing with the children. We want to display and rotate them out. Parents and children can see them, so we certainly don't want to be ignoring them. We don't want to put anything on our walls. We just want to be making sure that the majority of what we're putting into our classrooms is supporting the CCME. Because I think there was a big misconception at one point that it was like, oh, nothing on the walls because we don't want it to look, we want to look a certain way and blah, blah, blah. But I want it to be understood that's really for the child's needs, that anything that's being brought into the environment is for them. And sometimes I think we kind of question, is it for them or is it for the teacher? We want to make sure that there's that clear understanding. And what are some ways that you make art more of a process versus it being product based?
We had turtle work that we did, so it was like a paper plate, and I guess we started with them painting it so they could paint any color for the shell, and then we had little paper bits over the head and the legs and the tail. So one day we painted it, and then the next day we did all the body parts. And so we did it, like we panned everyone a head, and we had a display one that I made in the middle so they could see what it could look like, and then had them put it where they wanted to. So they all ended up kind of wonky, but so everyone got the head, and then once the head was done, everyone got 4 feet. We talked about like which parts they were, and then everyone got a tail, and then we were able to stick together and make our own turtles. It's like multi-step, multi-day. So
Nice.
like when they were painting it, we were like, tomorrow we're gonna add the body parts.
That's great. And I love that you had the finished product in the middle too, so they could be visualizing what the expectation was, and it allows for that independence. Thank you. What are some other ways that we can make art more of a process versus just a product-based project?
Having like a variety of materials and letting them kind of like how I have at like lunchtime, they go up and they get their food and they come back and get more, kind of having them be able to like pick what they want now, and then say like, if you want different things, you can come back and get a different thing or get more of what you need.
Yeah, no, that's great. Giving them that choice is always good, so it's a little less structured and they have more control over what the project is, what they want it to look like. Does anyone else want to share what they think of art when they think of a process?
I think using like trays and like holders for paint that promote independence. So like we have these cups for our paint so that they're no spill and they can just use the paintbrush and trays for colors. And we just put them on our easel sometimes, and they can go and create whatever painting they want to make. And then I ask them, like, what did you make? And they rate what they saw, then they can do it.
It's like flying out of the Central Square office.
Yep.
So that's very open ended, right? Or even if you had that little tray and put just little paint on it, and then a paintbrush and a small piece of paper, and put that tray on the shelf, then that's something they could take out, and you kind of do. I recommend like watercolors for that, so it's not as if they do try to paint everything, it's not as severe. But that would be another way that's more of a process than it is as a product. And why is it
put it on the easel too, not necessarily on the shelf? Like they won't get it everywhere.
Yeah. And why is it important that we're thinking about CCOI and about the process? Why is that important?
Because I feel like at 2, they're getting more ready for preschool, and we're trying to promote independence as much as we can.
Yep, definitely help promote the independence. I'm just going to pull up one quote here. Give me a second. All right, who would like to read this quote for us?
I'll read it. And so we discovered that education is not something which the teacher does, but that is a natural process which develops spontaneously in the human being. It is not acquired by listening to words, but in virtue of experiences in which the child acts on his environment. The teacher's task is not to talk, but to prepare and arrange a series of motives for cultural activity in a special environment made for the child. Maria Montessori, The Absorbent Mind. You're welcome.
So what are our thoughts when you think of this quote? What are your initial thoughts?
My thoughts are, honestly, I do truly believe in the fact that we need to allow them to be spontaneous. That's how they basically answer a lot of their questions, because they become curious. So for them to just spontaneously want to see something and then want to know everything about that specific thing is part of what learning is part of them becoming what it is to become an adult in this setting,
Great, yes, thank you. I agree. Any other thoughts on the quote?
I love how the children are like really involved in their learning, and I feel like the teacher is more there just to like help them, like when they need help, and like guide them for like the right way, but to just for kids to be more like involved in the classroom than just like the teacher just standing there saying like this is what needs to be done. And it involves more creativity and independence, and I feel like that's exactly what they need at 2 in preschool.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with that as well. Any other thoughts? When we think of this quote and then think about CCOI, if you shared that you like the spontaneous and that it allows the children to be independent, when we think of, the works that don't, or the things in our classroom that are not supporting CCOI, it's usually because it is teacher directed and it's coming from the teacher, because it's coming at circle time or coming. And in that case, then we kind of have to think, especially with toddlers, because we're going to talk about language in toddlers in a couple weeks. And we're going to really, look at some research that shows that how much they're actually comprehending of our words versus what they're seeing with our hands, and why everything in Montessori is hands-on, because they're actually learning from the material. They're not learning because we're saying, this is red. It's matching red. It's seeing red in the environment. It's engaging with it, similar to what that quote was saying. It's not because, oh, teacher says it's red, it's red. So when we kind of, separate ourselves from that train of thought, and we're really basing everything off our classroom to make sure it supports concentration, coordination, order, and that last one, independence, that they can independently be working with it, then we're getting into a space where children are able to learn with more ease. And when they're able to engage with the environment with more independence, the less of the classroom managing we have to do. Like you were saying, it's more just a guidance of, okay, sometimes they need a little more help in certain areas, and we're going to guide them back on track. But when they're able to just, kind of do it for themselves, there's a lot more flow and success, and not as much, tension or need or want for that independence, because it's already there. And we kind of, we talked about that during the biting PowerPoint as well, or the biting class, is that, a lot of this is this need for independence. And when they don't have it, or they're feeling threatened, then they lash out with the different behaviors. And sometimes it's a good old chomp on the arm of a friend. Is there anything that you're willing to share that maybe you will be doing differently in your classes after thinking about this information, or thinking about bringing everything in and how it will be supporting CCOI?
We really like the shapes in Elise's classroom. We're thinking about making that for our circle with like the matching and everything. I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, it's amazing. Just add a little Velcro, and then all of a sudden you have that fourth element of independence. And like we were saying, it's a nice coordination a nice coordination goal to be going up and taking things off. If you have a place to hang it. If you don't have a place to hang it, then the easel, like we were talking about earlier, Central Square, is a great way to display something temporarily, where we're not putting tape on the walls for EC regulations, but we can still satisfy that work. Anything else?
Well, I think I might turn some of their stuff, like you said, some of the stuff that we have for circle time would be an awesome work for them to, especially the weather work, where if we could, right? It's like a drawing, a cartoon picture of the weather. What if we have a matching of the actual, what it looks like outside when it rains, what it looks like really outside when it's sunny out, and they can match the cartoon to the weather of the real.
Right. Or like, how fun would it be if you just had like a backdrop, and then they could build the weather? They could put clouds up, they could put a sun up, they could put raindrops down.
We had one that was like that, but it became too not advanced enough for the kids. So we gave the toddler one. We had one that they could match the animals, match the bears, and put together in sunny out. They put grass on it, and they were just like not interested. Even if when I tried to show it to them, and it was toddler one's more interested in it than toddler two.
Really good observation. You never know how they're going to respond to it.
Yeah,
because you have a lot of tools in your toolbox.
It's like a magnet. Do you remember? It was like magnetic, and we had the stuff inside of it. So they had to actually open it up, take it out, and then put it back when it was done.
Okay. Yeah. Else? You can think of maybe of changes that, or something you would switch now, thinking it in terms of a child-centric way?
Maybe somehow making the list of rules more interactive. We already have like the images next to the rule, but it's like up above our shelf. We talked about it a lot in September and October when we were first starting, but we like don't really refer to it as much anymore. but maybe somehow doing a matching work or something with that to make it a little bit more interactive.
That's great. I'm excited to come in and see the different work that you've transformed. That will be exciting. All right, so I'm gonna stop recording now.